Okay, so we have students on all levels on our campus, obviously. So, how do you reach all of your learners? I know earlier you talked about differentiation with students with an IEP, and you mentioned a little bit about gifted students. So, tell me about a lesson which you've used differentiated instruction in.
I think that with reading and writing, of course, kids are on different levels. And so, what I try to do is pull that information and know their reading levels before and stay up to date on that. So, I can say to myself, I've got these 3 kids that are reading on this level, I've got these 5 kids that are reading on this level. And then I try to make sure that when I pull something, for example, an article that we're going to read or something like that, that I can change the Lexile level for the students, and that way everybody's reading the same article, but the vocabulary within the article will change based on the student's reading level. I can actually go in and change their Lexile score, and then I can give those to them. So that's one way that I could do that with reading. Of course, those kids that are reading well above grade level, I could always extend the learning for them, give them some more to read that they could compare. So not necessarily more work, but let them look at an article in a different way and compare it to the other article. Just have a small extension where they could discuss within their, with their peers. Do y'all usually, about how many GT kids would you say y'all have in a class?
I would say probably 1 to 2, with us being a very small campus. If you're talking like class, if you're talking grade wise, I would probably say 5 to 6.
Okay, so if you had them clustered where there were a couple in a class, they could partner up and extend their learning through a discussion or peer talking. Turn and talk is something I try to do with that. And then for writing, I just look at where the kid is and I try to go around and confer with them so everybody's working independently. So you may have already written an elaborate paper that's front and back, where somebody else that's still trying to get the structure of a paragraph is still working on that first paragraph. I can go sit down by that student, confer with them, see what areas they need to work on, and continue to pull that student to make longer papers and get more of a structured paper instead of just that one paragraph. So depending on reading or writing, I think I'm pretty skilled in being able to differentiate for all of the learners.
That's great. We have a subscription to Newsela at our school. So have you heard of that before?
Yes, that's actually one of the things I was referencing when I say I could go in there and put them on their correct reading level.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it really nice for the kids to be able to read something. They can do it on the computer, or I can print it out. We can have big discussions and everybody's still talking about the same thing, but they're reading it on their level.
I agree. And you talked about extending learning for the higher level kids, and I really like that. I think that using the technology is a great way to be able to extend their learning. Is there any other ways that you use like technology to be able to extend that learning with those articles that you've used?
I think that with the pace, the GT learner typically reads at a faster pace, so they sometimes can look and pull some things, do some research, and find something by the time I've finished reading with someone else. They've already found another article that's on that same topic that they can add more to the conversation when we have the open discussion.
That's great. Okay, so what are some of your classroom rules? If you have rules posted in your room, just a few, what are going to be the most important ones that you would post?
I stick with what we call the 3 P's, and that would be prepared for class, be prompt, so the students need to be there on time, and participate in the learning. And so with that, I spend quite a bit of time going over that with them, making sure they understand my expectations. And then if a student, for some reason, we've been into the time for a while, we've been 3 weeks in, and somebody is not on time, I'll still reiterate that rule. Remember our rule, it's posted, we have it here. You're supposed to be here on time, and I try to always go back to that list of rules, show them where it's written in the class so that they understand regularly.
That's great. Is there anything that you do to make them familiar with it in the beginning? What are some things that you usually do at the beginning of the school year to make
I
them
spend the
understand.
first couple of weeks going over my class procedures and the rules and expectations for how the class runs. And then I give examples of what it looks like from day to day. And then again, just going back over, remember, this is the rule and this is what it looks like in this classroom, and making sure the kids understand.
Okay. So how do you approach discipline, and what role do you think it plays in learning?
I usually try to handle all that myself. I explain to the students that, these are the rules. I expect you to follow them. And then I have short things that I do as punishments for things when they don't do them. Like, you're not getting this. You're going to need to come in and spend some time with me during this time instead of going somewhere else, or maybe in the mornings or after school. If that doesn't work, of course, I always try to do positive interaction with them as well. So if you get all your assignments done, if you're, no zeros in the grade book, if you do these things that I set in place for the 6 weeks, then at the end of the 6 weeks, we can have something special in the classroom, some sort of reward, something that kids would enjoy. A lot of times I let them pick. What do you want to be the reward at the end of the 6 weeks or the end of the grading period? Let's work for that. And then I have a reminder, like, here's my poster that says this class, second period, is working toward getting to have this at the end of the 6 weeks. And as we get all of those things done and we check them off, then at the end of the 6 weeks, I reward them.
That's great. We have incentives school campus-wide to also help with discipline, and so I like that you incorporate in your classroom, so they kind of have two incentives to go there. We do 9-week trips to places like Grand Slam and such if students have not had discipline and they're on AB honor roll and their attendance is good and things like that. So that's a great idea to have the class incentives, and then having it posted as a friendly reminder to make sure that they're staying on task and doing what they're supposed to do, so that their class can receive that. Can you provide an example of a positive reinforcement that you might use in your class?
I like to give them some time. So if they spend their time wisely and they don't waste any class time, then sometimes I might give them a few minutes of time to be able to read a book or sit at their desk or talk to a friend. Social time is big at this age. I've also done class outside, so we can work toward having a day of class outside, and then on that day we just take all of our stuff, find a place outside in the spring especially, and just have our class out in the nice weather instead of in the classroom.
I think that's a great idea. I know when I was a teacher I did some of those things as well, and taking the kids outside, they loved that and they begged for it, usually just like you said in the springtime. And yes, social time is huge for kids at middle school level, and so giving them that time will definitely help and is a positive reinforcement that you can use in the classroom. Those are great examples there. Can you give me an example of a successful behavior management strategy that you have used in the past?
Usually, I start off from the beginning and I just give a warning, and then I always try to make contact with the parent so that the parent knows that, hey, I've started with these rules and we've had a couple of warnings and here we are. So probably about the second, third week of school by then, I feel like they should understand the expectations. I've reinforced the expectations throughout the first few weeks. So by then, I start sending a letter home if I can't catch the parent on the phone, or calling the parent. I think that that's always important. The parent wants to know how their child is doing at school, especially with behavior.
I like that. Communication is really big, and keeping the parents involved in the child's education as well as how they're doing behavior-wise is huge. We have a discipline plan that's put in place, and kind of like you mentioned with the warning and then the parent contact, those are some steps that you would take when a child is misbehaving. So I like those ideas that you presented there. So what are some ways, you said a letter, what are some other ways that you communicate with parents?
I try to have as much information going to the parents as I can. So at the beginning of the grading period, I try to send home kind of what our scope and sequence is going to be, what we'll be covering over the next few weeks, so the parents could be prepared for that. what resources the kids have available and they might be bringing home. I also try to give the parents feedback through the grading for the grade book. At the beginning of the year, I try to spend time making sure that the parents are logging into the student information system and getting access to their students' progress as they're going, so that if there's ever a missing assignment, the parents know it's missing and they can contact me. We can discuss it. We can try to get that taken care of before it gets too far away for the child. And then I always try to call home if the student's misbehaving, but I also try to call at least once a grading period if the student is, if there's something that the student is doing really well, like I've started to see they're making progress or they're getting their work turned in on time, or I'm seeing that their learning is really taking a turn for the best. I always try to make sure the parent's aware of that.
I like that you mentioned positive, not only negative, but positive communication, because sometimes all a parent can hear is negative when they're hearing from a teacher. So even if you're emailing them or sending them a reminder of how their child is doing and that they're doing a good thing in the classroom, that's a great thing to communicate to the parents. We usually have teachers keep a contact logged and put down when, who they spoke to, and what they spoke to about, so we can have that documentation. Okay, so could you tell me about a time when you had a challenging situation with a parent or colleague, and how did you end up resolving this issue? And if you haven't had a time like this, then you can explain how you would handle an irate parent.
Okay, in my previous district, we had a pretty strict dress code, and so every morning our principal got on the sound system and said, we need you all to check dress code at this time, and we need to correct it. So in the very beginning of the year, trying to correct dress code takes a little bit of time, and so I had a parent that I was trying to give the child the opportunity to just correct the dress and keep going and not get a punishment, so that we're still in the learning phase. I want the child to learn from this, and we're not going to wear this to school anymore. And so I took the kid to the office and allowed him to call his parent so that he could get some new clothes and get back to class. And the parent wanted to speak with me, was very upset, yelling and hollering at me, using some inappropriate language. And so after we got off the phone, she came to the school, and I asked her if she had calmed down. I gave her an opportunity to tell me everything that she was upset about, why she didn't like the dress code, and all of the things that I really had no control over, but she needed to tell someone that she was upset. So I just listened, and then once we got through it, she had brought him another shirt. He changed his shirt. He went back to class, and all was well. But she just really wanted to be heard that she didn't like the dress code. She didn't like the way we handled those things, and I gave her that opportunity.
I agree. A lot of times when parents are angry, they just want to be heard. And so you sitting back and listening is good. And I also like that you included giving the student an opportunity to learn. Sometimes teachers go to straight discipline and wanting them to be punished, and that's not what it should be about.
And if we're well into the year and the kid knows the dress code, that's different. But
right.
When the first few weeks and they're still learning, I think we still give them that opportunity to correct it.
I agree. Okay, so at Troop, we strive to be a team. We want the faculty to work together, whether it be your team or your grade level. So can you describe a time that you were a part of a team and you worked together to achieve a goal?
Yes. So in my previous district, we had teams for everyone that taught the same students. So I would, the language arts teacher for the team, and we worked together. There's a science teacher on my team, a social studies teacher on my team, math, etc. And our principal said that they were going to do a Friday schedule, and that schedule would incorporate some tutorial time during the middle of the day, and that we as a team were to decide who gets which kids and why. And sometimes that's hard when you start discussing, because everybody wants that same group of kids. Like this, Johnny's having problems in my room, he's having problems in your room, he's having problems. So how are we going to decide who gets which kids and why? Mm-hmm. So after a little bit of discussion, we were able to come to a good resolution for how to rotate the students. And we really looked at those students that are making it, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 instruction, and we tried to say, like, okay, these kids are really making it with tier 1 instruction, so who wants to start with them and work on getting these kids to meets and masters level? And then the kids that are in tier 2 instruction, we could have them in a small group, and who's going to take those kids and work on trying to get them to pass. And then tier 3 students, we wanted to work on just making progress. So where are they? Who's going to take those? So we really tried to break them down into RTI groups, and it was a really good solution for us because it kept those kids rotating through, and everybody had a purpose.
I like that you mentioned that. We do something similar here with Tiger Time, and so we break those students down, and I like that you use discussion, and we're able to come up with a rotation amongst your fellow teachers to be able to work that out and be able to have each of those kids at one point in time.